sure help if I took myself off mute. Hello, everyone out there in virtual land. Welcome to our presentation today. We're going to be talking about physical literacy in early childhood programs. So we're super excited to be here. And yeah, let's get started. As the moderator said, feel free to ask us some questions in the chat box if you'd like. We'd be happy to help you. But she did a great job of introducing me. So I will actually let our awesome practicum student from Mount Royal introduce himself really quick. So Kaylin, I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kaylin. Can anybody hear me?
I can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kaylin. I'm a fourth year practicum student at Mount Royal University. I'm in the physical literacy degree. And right now I'm taking my practicum under Jen. So this is just a first project that we're doing together, and I'm excited to share my knowledge to help make it easier to understand what physical literacy is and how to make it fun in childhood.
Hey, thanks, Kaylin. We always like to start our presentations off with a quick land acknowledgement. So here we go.
We honor our ancestors by acknowledging Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge the Treaty 7 nations, the Piikani First Nation, the Siksika First Nation, the Kainai First Nation, Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. We acknowledge the ancestral territory of the Siksika-Tsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the home of Métis Region number 3.
So I'm going to turn it back over to Kaylin, and he's going to just walk us through what physical literacy is. Obviously, you've heard quite a bit if you've been around for this conference so far, but we're going to hear from Kaylin, and then we'll talk specifically about early childhood.
If I can just jump in for 2 seconds, Kaylin and Jen, if you are comfortable, it would be great if you can turn on your camera so we can see you, if that's possible. Oh, there we go. Hello, Kaylin. Nice to see you.
I will be honest, when I have presentations and Zoom happening, my internet hates me. So I have to have one or the other, but I will turn my camera on towards the end, if that's okay.
No, that sounds good. It's just nice to put a face to a name and a presenter, right? But we'd much rather hear you when you do your part, Jen. So all good. Thank you so much. I'm just going to disappear now.
And one more thing, if I could also jump in, is just whenever you're ready, Jen, to share your slide. We're not seeing it yet, or perhaps you're about to get to that, but I just wanted to mention that.
No, that is very helpful. Oh, technology, eh?
I know. So we're seeing the top. There we go. So we can see the Canva slides there.
How's that?
Okay, that's perfect. Over to you both.
Okay, Kaylin, sorry, I digressed really quickly there, but I turn it back to you, my friend.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about what physical literacy is. I'm sure everyone here has heard what physical literacy is through the past day. So simplifying it is, there's 5 main components of it, and it's to have the confidence, knowledge, motivation, competence, and understanding to be physically active. So what does this really mean is you have to have the knowledge to complete a skill. So say your skill is kicking, you have to have the knowledge of how to kick a ball. You have to have the confidence to do a skill, because if an individual, especially if a child does not have any confidence, they're not going to be very successful in achieving that skill. And then there's always a goal in achieving any activity. So if you're trying to throw a ball at a wall, for example, you want to see maybe how many bounces the ball comes back to you, or you're trying to aim at a specific spot at the wall. So what does this look like in children? So physical literacy looks more like in youth as the fundamental movement skills. So what are the fundamental movement skills? The fundamental movement skills are skills involving the heads, arms, legs, trunk or upper body, hands, and feet. They're more simple skills that can become more complex once learned, such as building block skills. And then there's skills that can lead to individuals being able to play in sport. For example, if your kid wants to play soccer, they need to have the fundamental movement skills of running, kicking, balance, throwing, even jumping. So having all these fundamental skills can make it into a more complex skill and further their development into being physically active. So some assessment tools for physical literacy. The first one is the Best C assessment, and then there's a link below. If you go to that link, you can actually download the Best C assessment for free. So what this is it's a balance assessment. So there's 6 different exercises. The top 3 are just on flat ground. So first, you're going to stand with your eyes closed, hands on your hips, and feet together. The second one, you're going to stand eyes closed, hands on your hips, and then your non-dominant foot on the ground. And then the third one, eyes closed, hands on your hips, and then you're going to have your dominant foot in front of the non-dominant foot. And then on the bottom 3, you're going to stand on an unstable surface. So anything like a foam mat, something that's just not as stable as the solid ground. And you're going to do the exact same 3 things. The second assessment is the TGMD3 assessment. So this is more for the fundamental movement skills, as this assesses every aspect of each fundamental movement skill, such as throwing. So this will go into the dive of, if a person's throwing a ball, are they falling through with their arm? Are they stepping forward with their non-dominant foot? Are they throwing overhand or underhand? Every little detail that will follow through. And then lastly, fine versus gross movement skills. So this will help understand more about the fundamental movement skills, as almost fundamental movement skills are the gross movements, which are whole body movements, such as walking, running, jumping, skipping, anything that uses the core muscles that stabilize your body. Where fine movements are small, precise movements. They use smaller muscles, usually in the hands or wrists. Examples are like holding a cup. Or if you want to put into sports perspective, raising a puck in hockey. If you turn your wrists, you're able to raise the puck. So it's a fine movement or an adjustment.
Can you see that gross movement slide, Kaylin, or are you done with this one?
I'm done with that one.
Okay. So ultimately, and thanks, Kaylin, for sharing that background. As you probably saw in the intro, and as Kaylin talked about, he's a physical literacy student in Mount Royal. So it's always nice to have that perspective and some of the nitty-gritty details. So what does this actually mean for early childhood? And when we talk about early childhood, really what we're talking about is the 0 to 4 years of age group. These are actually the Canadian 24-hour movement guidelines for the early years. So for our toddler kiddos who are just entering recreation programs or perhaps play school, preschool programs, those are our kiddos who are 1 to 2 years of age. What we're after is that 180 minutes of physical activity in a variety of intensities. So energetic play, slow movement play, balancing, fundamental movement skill, practice, all that good stuff. With very little or, very little sitting time. Our preschool age group is really the 3 to 4 year olds prior to entering into kindergarten and into school years. Again, we're after 180 minutes of a variety of physical activity throughout the day and at least 60 minutes of energetic play, running, moving, jumping, getting the heart rate up, the lungs really moving. And again, not sitting for that long time. Obviously, these are great guidelines. In practice, a lot of the times we're not having our kids running and moving as much as we can, especially during COVID. For a lot of us who worked in recreation programs or direct delivery programs where we had to shut down, a lot of those kiddos were at home with parents who might be working on the computer, and a lot of the screens came out. However, as you all know, I know us in Alberta, we are open for business. We want to make sure that a lot of our early childhood kids are getting the best quality opportunities to learn and practice fundamental movement skills. So I just wanted to share this awesome program, and I know that there's some Active for Life folks in this call, specifically Lynn from Active for Life, who worked on the Apple model. And this was actually out of Mount Royal University and in collaboration with Active for Life and the government of Alberta. And it was part of a physical literacy proof of concept study. It just actually finished in 2020. And what they were looking at is how quality early childhood programming can enhance physical literacy in early childhood. And what they were looking at is developing this program and implementing it in 30 centers in Alberta and BC. So really direct delivery with 600 kids and over 100 educators. And as you probably would have guessed, when we have quality physical literacy programming, children are really experiencing strong improvements in manipulative skills, so fine and motor skills, and then they're getting greater fundamental movement skill development, so running, jumping, throwing, catching, all the stuff that Keelan shared earlier. But the cool thing was that beyond the physical development improvements, kids actually were greater at problem solving, adaptability, self-regulation, and focus. And for those folks like myself who worked with kids for a really long time, when we have those skills beyond physical literacy being developed, that's some really great magic that's happening. So being able to self-regulate when children are faced with challenges reduces the amount of behavior that direct educators are having to deal with, which is awesome. And then those self-regulation skills not only are happening in early childhood programming, but they're also happening at home, which is awesome. Another great thing was educators spent more time directly engaging with kids and had a greater sense of happiness, which for those folks like yourselves who worked in early childhood, some days it can be a lot. So we want to make sure that our educators are happy and delivering programming for our young kiddos. And then obviously the connection between children, educators, and families was stronger. So not only are we developing the physical end of things, there's some social, emotional, and cognitive development that's happening when we're implementing quality programming like the Apple model. And I think from my end as a recreation practitioner, when physical literacy programming is not only easy, it's inexpensive, it doesn't require a lot of prep time, space, or special equipment, we are winning. So if we're using materials that we have on hand to help kids develop physical literacy, we are winning because we're not spending a lot of time planning and prepping things or using specialized equipment. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the Apple model, I actually just in the chat box, Keelan and I developed a little worksheet for you to download. We'll talk about the tips on the top, but there's some really amazing links on the bottom and resources that you can access, including information around the Apple model. So have a peek through that, download it, and share it with your colleagues. So here, just looking directly at the Apple model and some of the amazing things that did come out of that. So this actually was an infographic that was designed by Active for Life and the Early Years Physical Literacy Research Team that was directly headed by Dr. Don Clark from Mount Royal University. And this particular study was actually funded through the government of Alberta, this 2-year study. So this is a recap of basically what they saw in the Apple model delivery at the end. So we have, again, 75% improved emotional development, 75% of kids are able to manage their behaviors, improvement in cognitive development. Again, we're after kids being more active. So 94% of kids were more active, social development and focus and participation. And something that I'm really interested in is around play. So 69% were engaged in more free play, 100% more imaginative, 87% more independent, and 87% more adventurous and risky play opportunities. So some really great stuff. When we look at the educator side of things, again, educators who are delivering quality programming and have the support and focus to do that are experiencing better days with kids. They will continue to use physical literacy programming, and then they have those improved relationships with kids, their fellow staff, and parents. So again, when we're doing really great stuff around physical literacy in early childhood, not only are the kids directly benefiting, but also the educators and the families. So it's really a community effort. And again, if you want to learn a little bit more about the Apple model, Active for Life, those resources are on the bottom of that PDF. So we've talked about physical literacy. We've talked about the benefits of physical literacy. How do we put this in action? Because that's where the magic happens. So here's our quick 12 tips. We'll go through, and then we have a little bit of a breakout room for all the folks who are on the call today, and you can do a little brainstorming with some of your colleagues up in the NWT. So how can you incorporate more physical literacy in early childhood program? So number one, Remember that kids learn best through play. A lot of times we focus in early childhood on the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, which is great. But when we give children opportunities to play and be active and learn those skills through play, we're really doing benefits with their cognitive, physical, emotional, and social development. Really important to give children a choice in how they move. A lot of times we see kids lined up. I'm a teacher by trade. I teach quite a bit in observation rooms with children with disabilities. And a lot of times in school settings or in programming settings, we have kids lined up, which is great, and it's controlled setting. But if we give children choice in how they move to the next activity, or what kind of tree they're balancing in a tag game or a yoga pose, children are more likely to be engaged, and they're also more likely to be engaged in imaginative play. And really that's what we're after. And I'll show you a bunch of different play types in a second here. Number 3, we want to be flexible with our programming. So we have to be really adaptable, meeting the different interests and abilities of the kids in our program, because no kiddo that comes to our program is the same. We always want to be able to take the children's lead. And if you have in your program plan, today's under the sea day, and your kiddos come and they say they want to have a snow day, we're going to make a right turn, and we're going to use their interests and abilities to take it a different direction. So being adaptable is really important. Number 4, we're going to use a developmental sequence by starting where children are at and gradually increasing the level of challenge. So if we have, we use stations quite a bit in phys ed, which is one of the subjects that I teach quite a bit. Children can self-direct where they're at in terms of challenge. So we might have a kiddo in our program who's just learning to throw, and another one of our kids is able to throw to a target. So if we set up stations where children can self-select where they're at and increase the level gradually, we're going to set them up for success. Number 5, really, really important, and I think a lot of times we forget, is we can add physical literacy sparks wherever possible. So one of my favorites is balancing on one foot when I'm having kids line up for the water fountain. It's easy, it's simple, and kids are engaged, and they're also practicing physical literacy skills at the same time. Another one we use quite a bit is transition activities. So perhaps you're moving your program from a gymnasium space to a multi-purpose space. We could have our kids tiptoe and creep along the wall like they're walking on a tightrope. Not only is it fun and engaging and imaginative, again, they're practicing those fundamental movement skills in a way that is easy for us to implement and easy for them to take on as a task. Number 7, love encouraging children to be mindful of how their bodies are moving. So we, in another program that I offer is Healthy Play, we talk about processing or using fun processing activities. So if we have kids who are playing a tag game and we've noticed that we need to take a little bit of a water break, now we're in a group and we're setting in the water fountain, I might ask the kids, what did you hear in this activity? And they might say, oh, I heard screaming, and I heard people laughing, and I heard feet stomping. And I might also ask, what did you see in this activity? Well, I saw friends I saw my friend trying to take somebody else. I saw people working together. I saw people talking and shouting with each other. And then most importantly, how did you feel in that game? And they might say, oh, I felt like my heart was racing because I was running so fast. Or maybe they were, we have an activity where kids are engaging in risky play. Well, I had butterflies in my tummy before I jumped off the rock. Giving kids those opportunities to process is a really part of the physical literacy experience. Because when we know or when we can reflect on how our bodies feel, we can use that as a way to experience mastery. Number 8 is provide refining cues to increase fundamental movement skill development. In High 5, we talk about using the grocery store example. So if I go to the grocery store and I have a list of all the things I don't want, so I don't want toilet paper, I don't want mustard, I don't want cat food, I don't want bottled water, what am I going to come back with? I'm going to come back with nothing, because it's the list of all the things that I don't want. But if I flip it and have all the things that I do want, I'm going to come back with a whole list of, or a bunch of grocery bags, all the things I want. And the same applies when we're talking about children. So instead of saying something that we don't want, don't move your legs like this, don't move your arms like this, We want to talk about what we do want to see. So keep your arms like an airplane wings when you balance. That's going to help you help your muscles stay stable. Again, keeping it positive and increasing those refining cues to increase the mastery of fundamental movement skill development. Number 9, encourage kids and groups to generate creative solutions to movement challenges. So when we go to a piece of equipment on a playground and it's a little more challenging than they're used to, having kids work together to come up with creative solutions is not only benefiting them cognitively and socially, it's also benefiting them with their physical development. So if we need to move our group across a roped climbing wall or a roped piece of playground equipment, how do we work together in order to overcome that challenge? Number 10 is make connections with what they're learning in your program and how you can use those skills in real life. So a lot of times we talk about fundamental movement skills as a standalone. Oh, so we're going to learn to throw, and we're going to learn to balance, and we're going to learn to run or roll or dip or dive. But how do those skills translate into real life? So if I'm teaching my my kiddos in an early childhood program to balance on one foot, I can talk about, well, when you learn to balance properly, you can play on the playground and you can move through playground spaces really safely. Or you can balance on one foot really easily when we're playing freeze tag. Or you can walk on ice. Those are all balance skills that are part of real life that we need to communicate to our young kiddos. Number 11, I love, love, love. Take time to celebrate even the smallest successes. So if a child is really struggling or they're having a hard time with a skill, if there's something that we can pull out of there that's a success, you know what, I loved, Kaylin, how you moved your arm like that. I think that's the start of something great. We're celebrating those things, and that's where we're going to see kids feel successful and feel mastery. And then I had to throw this in here because I'm a big fan. We are all in this work because we love to play and be engaged with kids. Be a great model and get engaged and play. One of the biggest things that I do in my classes, and I sometimes get a little flack for it, is I am on the floor, I'm rolling around, I'm doing yoga moves, I'm playing dodgeball, I'm jumping through hoops. Those things are really not only important to role model for our kids in programming, but it's part of the awesomeness of this work that we do every day in recreation and sport is being able to play and get paid. So be a great role model and get engaged and get out there and get playing. So now that we've given you all of our secret sauce success, what we're going to do, and hopefully Thorsten can help me out, we're going to split up our 20 folks into 3 groups. And what I want you to do is reflect on Kaylin's information on physical literacy, the Apple model, and some of the tips and tricks that we just shared with you. And you're going to go into one of 3 groups. You're going to brainstorm 5 ways that you can encourage fundamental movement skill development within that play type. So this is just a short sheet of play types. There's actually over 30 different types, but group 1 we're going to have is creative play. So an example would be walking on a skipping rope, and perhaps we have all of our kids doing circus activities, but the skipping rope's on the ground and we're walking on a tight rope above, a roaring lion. Group 2 is going to be around social play. So social play is all about following rules and changing up rules to make sure that everyone's engaged. So perhaps only running on the lines in a gym during a game of tag. So one of my favorite games, line tag, because it doesn't have any fancy equipment and it's super fun. And then group 3 is going to be around mastery play, which is a little bit of a wild card, but I think we can handle it. So mastery play is around environments, around control of the physical and effective ingredients of environment. So perhaps moving tree branches together to create a fort. So hopefully that makes sense. Maybe give me some thumbs up if that all sounds good. And Thorsten, if we can break out into 3 groups, that would be fantastic. I'm not sure if I have that ability. No, I don't. Anyone out there?
Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So we have attendees, so I don't know if we can actually put them into groups, but let me try and see how we can make that.
And if we can't, we can do a hard left turn, and we can maybe do some brainstorming together as a group.
Yeah, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Kim and Kami. You might know that better from the past conferences that you did, especially webinars. Do you have any suggestion on that?
For sure. We could, you know what, I love your idea, Jen, of doing a group brainstorm where we can provide our ideas, maybe for each of the groups, the creative play, social play, mastery play, in the chat box, and take them one at a time. And then if you like, Kimi and I can help you manage the comments, or if you feel like you can handle that on your own, you can do that as well. Just let us know how Kimi and I can support you with that. But I'm not sure that we can do breakout rooms in a webinar format.
So good. So good in theory, but that's okay. I can manage the chat between Kaylin and I. Okay, friends, so let's start off really quickly. I think we have a couple minutes. We'll tackle maybe group the 1 and 2, and then if we have, we'll go to level 300 with mastery play. So attendees out there, how do we build fundamental movement skills into creative play? Any examples that you want to share in the chat? Any awesome ideas? What things that you might be doing in your early childhood programming right now? Just throw them up in the chat box. Love me a fun game, Thorsten. Love me a fun game. Anybody else out there? And I'm not sure if you can take yourself off mute, but feel free to do that as well if you like. Everyone's nice and quiet out there. Any, love active dice. Yes. And I'm pretty sure Jen and I are talking about the same thing. Active dice you can get from Everactive Schools. It's a fantastic resource that you can print off. Awesome. Yeah, I can maybe throw that up in the chat, the website for them. They have just tons and tons of physical literacy resources that I use all the time in my phys ed classes, and as well as recreation programming. Ability center, warming up by moving like your favorite animal. Yes, around the room. How many times a principal has caught me being a giraffe or being a snake on the ground? I can't even tell you. Physical literacy, okay, that's okay. Any other ideas for creative play? That's probably the easiest way of building fundamental movement skills, especially when we take a child's lead. So again, walking on a skipping rope, or maybe you have ice cream container lids and those become rocks in a lava pool. Reading movement stories, also awesome. Thanks, Jen, for sharing that. What about social play? Any ideas there? So social play is social situations where it's expected that everyone will follow a set rule, like during a game. And when we're talking about recreation programming and taking a child's lead and really fostering that imaginative play, we can change up the rules, the dynamics of the group, who's paired with who, how we pair people to really engage and build those social development skills. So any ideas, anything you're working on or that you do in early childhood programming that works really well in terms of fundamental movement skill development in social play? And I love active story walks. Thanks, Jen, for sharing that. Anybody out there? Social play. My friend Lynn out there in my hometown, Calgary, loose parts play. Yes, very social. If you are interested in learning about loose parts play, there are just a ton of resources. I'm not sure if I included them on the PDF, but essentially loose parts play is every parent's and early childhood educator's dream. You literally just take anything that you can possibly find, put it in a container and let kids go wild. And you'd be amazed to see what children come up with, especially our young kiddos who just have the wildest imaginations. I have 8-year-old twins at home. We used to do that in the summertime just with garage equipment, and they would come up with the craziest activities, which again is not only working together and problem solving, but that creative imaginative play is really, really important. Oh yeah, Scotland has some awesome resources on loose parts play if you want to take a deeper dive there. Tag games, you know what, I'm going to put up in the chat box here. One resource that I use all the time as a teacher and as a recreation person is the ultimatecampresource.com. It's not on my PDF or our PDF sheet today, but that is essentially, if you're a summer camp person, all the activities you could potentially think of is listed as a resource on that website. Everything from team building games to animal or nature play games, anything you could possibly think of is on there. And if we take our fundamental movements skill development focus, we can manipulate how those games are played to really increase that skill development. Appetite to play, also great. Oh, I love that everyone's on the same page. Love it, love it. And I guess last but not least, I know we're kind of on the tail end and we're heading into question period here, but anything for mastery play, that's probably really difficult to kind of wrap our heads around, but that's how we, in the bottom left-hand corner here, we see the control of physical and effective ingredients, like digging holes for constructing shelters. So how do we take an activity and give children, especially our young kids, opportunities to learn fundamental movement skills, learn and practice those skills while also mastering through play? Any ideas there? My table tennis buddy. Yeah, playing table tennis. Yes, mastery of sports for sure. Creating tree forts, like the example there. Anything else? Nature play, loose parts play. Oh, obstacle courses for sure. Even if you're doing some really environmental education or outdoor play programming, building fundamental movement skills into those opportunities is a really great way to experience mastery play as well. So it could be not only building forts, but shelters, snow quansies, whatever that might be, especially in NWT where it's snowing out quite a bit of the time. I'll let you stew about that. There's some really great stuff. This graphic here we didn't include, but if you are interested in learning about different types of play, please let me know. And I'm happy to share this graphic with you, as well as some other resources and links. We could talk about play for 3 days, but obviously our presentation is quite short here. So any questions about any of the information that we shared with you today? That was quick about early childhood. So just to recap, Kaylin gave an awesome recap of fundamental movement skills and fundamental movement skill assessment. We talked about the Apple model, implementation in early childhood recreation programs, tips and tricks, and then some ideas for different types of play.
I think that was great. That was great. You shared so much information, Jen. I think some of the key things that I certainly jotted down had to do with the Apple model you showed, right? And the great reminders that when kids are active and move their bodies, they increase problem solving, their focus is better, they better self-regulate, and they make better human connections. And I think that goes the same with adults, right? And also a lot of these activities that you're mentioning here, as well as before, they're very low cost. There should not be many barriers to creating physical literacy opportunities for these young kids, right? And the other thing, which is consistent, a few things you mentioned that are also consistent with our experts from yesterday, was that kids learn best through play and through stories, right? Through creative play, celebrating the small, genuine successes. Don't just give a ribbon for the sake of giving a ribbon, but as you said, Kaylin, you moved your arm. This is a stepping stone to bigger and better things, or really making them intentional for that individual. And also being a role model. We heard a lot yesterday about, as an adult, get out, get active, be a role model to the kids. They will see you having fun, ergo they will know that playing sports or being physically active, moving, is also fun. I have a few questions for you. I'm new to this concept of physical literacy. I coach older kids, but a lot of what you said, I think can very much be applied to the older children. And I'm also do some sport with children with physical and cognitive disabilities. So I'd like to find out more. And I would love to see anybody else ask questions in the chat box. I'll be happy to ask Jen and Kaylin those questions. But first of all, when you were talking about physical literacy sparks, you were asking specific question about What did you see? How did you feel? Any tools that could be used to help sport leaders or organizers of sport activities come up with these questions? Because it doesn't come intuitively for me to ask those questions. So I would love to hear from you where I can go to find out more.
That's a really good question. I love that you asked that. So those processing techniques, that's just one of them. And when you're working with older kids, and to be honest, I have used that. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? From 1-2-year-olds right up until when I facilitate adults in physical literacy programming. So I use that all the time because it's easy. But some other techniques that you could use is lemons and lollipops. So what is something sour? It's something you didn't like about the activity we just played. What is something sweet? So what's the lollipop out of here? So I engaged with my friends, or I mastered the 3-point shot, whatever that might be. Again, quick, easy lemons and lollipops. What did you hear? What did you see? And what did you feel? And then keeping on the positive side as well, you can also do, what did you like? But what did you like better? And kids, again, will be very honest, right? They'll tell you, you know what, I didn't like that activity. And then as a sport leader or recreation leader, you're like, okay, that I'm going to table till maybe the next program time, or I'm going to try it, 4 weeks down the road from now. But using those simple processing techniques, not only does it give kids an opportunity to evaluate and share with you what they liked about those activities, but it's a really great way to bring the group back together, to have that debrief, that opportunity to share and figure out what we learn as a collective, what we need to do forward to experience mastery and feel successful as a group and as individuals. So to direct you to a direct website, I don't have that, because a lot of this is learned over the 25 years I've made mistakes and been in sport and recreation programming. But those are probably my top 3 use all the time in classrooms and recreation programming all the time. So see, hear, feel, lemons, lollipops, and what did you like? What did you like better?
I love that. Now, what happens when you introduce this concept for the first time with your group, right? And people kind of look at you. I don't know what to say, right? Like, as you could see, when you asked us to provide you with examples, I'm going to suspect, other than Lynn, who is very much involved with Sport for Life, many of us really didn't know. We didn't have any ideas. I was thinking so hard. Oh my gosh, mastery, creative play. So what's your advice for us who, again, are new with these concepts, introducing it to our group? Should we just ask the question and then wait? Or should we ask the question and provide some examples? Like, you don't want to lead them. You don't want to guide that direction too much, but I would love to hear what you would do in those situations.
Again, really great question. I saw Kaylin take himself off mute, so I'll give the table over to him, but I do have some learnings that I can definitely share. So Kaylin, what do you got?
I was just going to say, be confident, because if you're confident, then people will look up to you and be like, okay, she knows what she's talking about. She's asking the right questions. Especially with kids, if you're confident, you're going to be more of a role model to them. And even with older people, like teenagers as well, they might be like, okay, she's asking a proper question. Let's answer them and give her a proper answer.
I like that. That's very wise. Thanks, Kaylin, for sharing that. Yeah, I do agree. Like, having self-confidence, when you have that, people are going to feed off that for sure. And I will say too, Kim, I have done those 3 processing techniques. I facilitate High Five down here in Alberta, and we actually did it with the Calgary Police Service. So if you can imagine 30 very stoic police officers who maybe don't like the feelies being asked, well, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel in this game? I got a lot of nothing. But if we give the time, so we do the obligatory 10-second, usually one person in the group, the leader in the group, is going to voice forward and say, well, I felt this, or I liked this better, and then it cascades from there. Youth are going to be the exact same, but if you give an example like you just mentioned, I think that's where you start to spark those conversations. And if we do it over and over and over again, it becomes part of our practice. I think that's where you start to win. And like, I teach, if I'm in a school, I'll teach 6 or 7 periods of phys ed. I do it every single period, so the kids know that they have an opportunity to be part of the planning process, be part of the conversation, rather than me just speaking to them. And I think there's some real power when we do that and we give kids an opportunity to be part of that conversation.